Hi, Ida here. My plan was to make a video about how my midsummer went, like everyone else, and tell you how great it was. But as it turned out, I ended up having to work. That was a huge disappointment. So, yeah. Working on midsummer in Sweden, or the summer solstice, usually around the same time, but the big thing that most Swedes do is celebrate midsummer. And working on that day in an emergency department is not that fun. First of all, because you don't get to celebrate yourself, but secondly, because you get to take care of everyone who celebrated a bit too much. And it's basically like most summer days. Obviously, I can't get into the details because of confidentiality, what happened on the actual midsummer. But it's usually like on any other summer day, but with much more patience, because much more things happen, because people are partying. So the kind of patience we get in the summer during vacation times is people that break all kinds of limbs. It's nothing to laugh about. I'm sorry. You get people that are intoxicated, mostly alcohol, but also sometimes other things. Cannabis is quite common, amphetamine, that stuff. We get people that overestimate how good swimmers they are. We get people that go on boats without life vests and end up in the water. We get people that get into fights and get injuries with that, and that could be fist fights or knife fights or whatnot. Get people that are getting into accidents, of course, driving accidents, bikes. I'm telling you, people, motorbikes, what's it called in English? Motorcycles, motorbikes. You know what I mean? Those big, they're death traps. They are, trust me. So yeah, those were like the kind of things that I would have spent midsummer dealing with. And that's not gonna make a very interesting video, so I thought I wanted to make a video because I haven't done a video in a while, and I thought something that I could make fairly quickly and easily without much preparation would be talk a little bit about ancestors, because I've mentioned it several times on this channel that I work with ancestors, and I thought that there might be someone out there that's interested in hearing a bit more about that. So it seems like working with ancestors, whether you want to call it ancestor worship or ancestor practice or just ancestor work, has become more common among Western pagans in the last few years. When I started out around 10 years ago, it wasn't as much, not as many people doing it. It was mostly like people might do something for Samhain or Halloween, like make an offering or a meal or some kind of meditation or whatever, but the rest of the year it wasn't very much. Now there are more Western pagans that have an ancestor practice that is more sort of continuous throughout the year, and that is more an integral part of their daily practice. And it makes sense. I mean, ancestor practice is something that seems to have been fairly common throughout history, and is still fairly common in several different parts of the world. Africa, for instance, is still a lot of places that have strong ancestor traditions. The Viking Age in Scandinavia seems to have had some kind of ancestor practice. If you read the medieval sources, they would have some kind of idea that their ancestors lived on somewhere. You could go to the burial mounds and you can contact them there and get help, but they would also could also cause you problems And that's something that I've noticed too, that the Western pagans, they seem to have this idea of ancestors as universally friendly and helpful. And it seems to be, or people seem to think that the moment someone dies, they instantly get very wise and very kind, and any kind of trauma or other kind of wound just heals instantly. So there seems to be this idea that uh, it's fine to work with any kind of ancestor. All ancestors are safe and helpful and good. Whereas other cultures have a more ambiguous view on ancestors. There are ancestors that are good um, and benevolent, but there are also ancestors that can be quite dangerous to deal with. And you have to be careful so as not to anger the ancestors, because then they will cause you problems. I'm not really sure where I stand on this. I think that ancestors tend to be wiser and sort of more benevolent than we are when we are alive. There seems to me to be quite a lot of healing happening quite instantly when you pass away. But I think that there could also be some things that will linger and that will take more time to heal, and that there might be people that, because of that, um, even after they pass away, are not necessarily beneficial to work with, and are not necessarily safe to work with. So you need to uh, keep that in mind, that to make sure that the ancestors that you work with, that they are well, and that they are able to help you, and to make sure to keep a distance to any ancestors that are unwell. There are ways you can help them to get well if you want. I'm not going to get into the details of that because I'm not really an expert on that, but there are ways if you want to do that. But otherwise, make sure to keep a distance, uh, because I think also that it is possible that ancestors that are unwell could cause you problems. And I think especially if you're from a family where you can see that there seems to be things that are passed down through generations, some issues, problems that seem to be passed down through the generations, that are not just clearly um, genetic, or that are not just something that you see that it's simply the matter of children picking up behaviors from their parents. If you suspect that there's something deeper there, that there's some kind of a ancestor connection, it might be a good idea to have a closer look at that and see where that might come from and what that might be about, and see if you could find someone that is able to help you sort that out, and also help those ancestors that are troubled to get well. Um, but I see a lot of benefits with working with ancestors. I feel that it has been very valuable for me, and sort of it's been enriching for me in my personal life and for my practice as a pagan. I'm sorry about the shaking. The dog is under the table, chasing and hunting for flies. I'm trying to get him out, but he's insisting on sitting under the table. He's not too keen on the whole outdoor things. He prefers the city, but he doesn't get a say because I want to be in the country. Anyway, so and the reasons why I feel it's good to work with ancestors is that ancestors are spirits that you have this very strong connection with. Um, you know, it's really about blood with the ancestors. They are part of you, and you have come from them. So in my experience, ancestors, they tend to want you to do well, and they want to help you. They want uh, to look out for you. They want what's good for you, and they also, because they are not, they don't have the same limits as we do. We are in this material physical world with these material physical bodies, which I think is great. I really enjoy that, and I think that's sort of the point of having a physical body. But they don't have that limits. They have a different perspective. They are able to do things for you from where they are that you're not necessarily able to do yourself where you are. So it is it's great to have that kind of support, and they tend to want to protect you and keep you safe, and so they are good spirits um, to work with. And there are different ways, of course, you could do that, um, and different cultures do it in different ways. You can, of course, it's always good to start out actually by looking and do some research about who your ancestors were. Do some genealogy research and see, like, who are they, where were they from. Um, See if you can find out what they worked with or how they made a living. As much information as possible is valuable, both because it gives you sort of a somewhere to sort of start building a relationship, something to start building a relationship on. But also, if you suspect that you might have some kind of troubled ancestors, learning more about them might give you a hint um, as to where that could come from, who it is that's is troubled, where these problems started, and what these problems were when they were alive, and how you could handle that. Hang on, stop. Okay, the dog just like took off really fast, and I needed to see what was going on, but there was nothing. I guess he just decided to go indoors very quickly. Dogs, they get weird ideas sometimes. Where was I? So it's always good. It's always nice to at least have a name, and how much you can find out will of course depend on your family history, and you know, some families you have easy access to a lot of information. Other families there's nothing, um, but there's no harm in trying to have a look, and that's a good start. Another good start is to go and visit their graves if you know where they're buried. Tend to their graves, leave flowers. You can sit there and meditate. Having an altar is something that I do too, which I really enjoy. And you can put different things on the altar. Of course, you can have pictures, photos of your ancestors if you have that. You can have things that used to belong to them if you've inherited something to remember them by. Anything that reminds you of them. Um, Offerings, of course, is good. Either if you know something that they liked, some food or some flower or some beverage that they liked, you could give that to them. You can do something general, like a traditional dish that most people would have eaten in earlier generations. That's always good. Or like whatever people would drink in the past. I like to give coffee. Being Swedish, I know that's like something that most my recent ancestors would have enjoyed, because Swedes are big coffee drinkers. And even though it's was introduced to Sweden fairly recently, I don't know exactly when, but it can't have been too many generations ago. I also really like the aroma, like the scent. I don't actually drink coffee myself. I think it tastes awful, but I enjoy the scent. So I'm thinking that even for the generations, the ancestors that lived before coffee was introduced to Sweden, I think they might also enjoy the offering of the scent of coffee. And you can of course use incense and whatever. Something else that I use is like cookies or bread. I use alcohol, like whiskey or wine or beer. Um, what do you think they might appreciate? This is simple as that, really. And you can sit by the altar and meditate, or you can do guided meditations. You could do more sort of ecstatic shamanic style journeys if you want, like with drums or whatever. If you're into that kind of practice, I like to do that, for instance. But you could also just like sit there and talk to them. And it's good to talk out loud, actually. I think that sort of works better than just thinking in your head. And just, say their names and tell them how you're doing. If there's something that's on your mind, tell them about your troubles. Tell them that you would love for them to be a part of your life, and ask them if there's something you could do for them. If they want kind of offer some kind of offering, ask them if they have any ideas as to how you could improve your life, or any kind of special issue that you might be struggling with. Ask them, and then sort of meditate and keep an open mind and see if you get an answer. And again, as with all kinds of spirits or gods or guides or whatever, you might not get a response immediately when you're sitting there waiting, but 2 days later something might just pop into your mind. So I think it's good, like, have an altar and spend time there. It has worked very well for me. What else can I say? I'm not sure if there's more to say, really. No, I think I'll finish here so I don't get rambly. But I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you did. Please let me know if you have any questions, or if there's something you want me to make a video about. And thanks for watching.